Mr. Sabrana,
Present.
Ms. Spinelli, Mr. Ulrich,
Present.
Mr. English.
Here. Mrs. Acosta is under the weather this evening, and she said she will see you all next month. In compliance with the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law, commonly referred to as the Sunshine Law, the Vineland Board of Education has caused notice and posting of this meeting to be sent to the following, announcing time and place thereof, agenda, etc. The Daily Journal, SNJ Today, the Press of Atlantic City, Nuestra Comunidad, Vista Bueno, the Clerk of the City of Vineland, and the Administrative Office Public Bulletin Board. Flag salute. Do we have people tonight?
Yeah, they're
Flag
coming
salute?
at 6, when we come back out.
We'll we
We
still have to
have
do,
to-
we'll do it now.
Yeah, we could do it, because the kids.
All right.
At this time, please rise for the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Bustarella, do we have a resolution for executive session this evening?
We do, Mr. President. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the City of Vineland School District will convene into executive session on Wednesday, January 9th, 2019, for the following reasons outlined in NJSA 10:4-12. Discussion is the Max Lichter School property, business administrator position, and any matters falling within the attorney-client privilege, to the extent that confidentiality is required in order for the attorney to exercise his ethical duties as a lawyer.
For the record, 536, Ms. Spinelli.
Noted.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Acosta? Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. English?
Yes. At this time, we will be going into executive session. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. At this time, we are going to rise for the flag salute, and the Winslow Elementary School students, please come forward, and we will proceed to the flag salute.
Guys, the flag's on this side.
Whenever you're ready.
Thank you very
Hold on,
much.
go-
We
we've
have
got some certificates.
certificates. We're gonna get a picture, all right? Also, if you're, I think your advisor and your principal are here. If you are, please come up for the picture. Is your name Braxton? I think
No,
I
we
saw
do,
it.
but you don't. It's just,
Mrs. Braxton and Mrs. McLean, whoever else is here that I can't see from Winslow, come on up to be in the picture. Is that Mrs. Braxton here? I thought I saw her. Okay. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Ready for presentations, I have insight. I'll bring them up. What
That's
do
it,
you
right?
need? I know.
That's fine, that's it. That's
Yeah,
it,
right
right?
here. At this time, we have a presentation from Insight, and I would like to ask the two representatives if they could please come forward. Hi.
Hello, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Matzuk. I'm the District Manager for Insight Workforce Solutions for Vineland Public Schools. Here with me today is Hay Person. He's our Vice President. I'm just going to give a short presentation about our program here in Vineland. We partner with the school district to provide substitute staffing services and permanent paraprofessional staffing services as well.
I can't hear.
So I just wanted to start off with a little bit of data on our performance so far this year. I have it broken down by month.
I
This
guess
is a
people can
teacher
see you
analysis.
right
So
now.
currently we're
It's the glare.
Gotcha. Currently, we're filling at about 82%. I have it broken down by month, so I'll talk about this later in the presentation, but you'll see an ebb and flow in absence volumes as the year goes on. You see December was a tougher month for us, whereas September and January seem to look a bit better. We have noticed a bit of an uptick in teacher absences year over year, so the total number of 6,651 is higher than last year. I have our average absences per day for Vineland School District. That's 85. And then I also put our absence high for the school year so far. That's 174. We peaked at 174 teacher absences. I believe it was the 14th of December, a Friday in December, which I'll talk about later in the presentation as well. Along with our substitute program, we also have a permanent paraprofessional program. This is run by our special services manager, Jessim Walde, along with Terry Godlutsky. We have 42 special education positions and 7 general education positions. We're filling at a 98th percentile for those positions, and we are currently full. Our roster is full. We have no vacancies. Just a little bit about what history tells us and some of the barriers that we face in providing staffing for a school district, especially substitute-wise. Fridays are always our most difficult. Those are the days when most teachers and school staff members would like to take off, and substitutes as well. So a lot of that dip in our fill rate is seen by Fridays. Fridays kind of bring us down. We have a hard time with Fridays. Also, absence volume changes with the time of year. December, always a difficult month for us. Staff don't want to work, and neither do teachers. It's close to the holidays. Everybody's getting ready. And then we have about a spring fever in May and June. You'll see absence volumes go up there. Same concept. Substitutes don't really want to work as well. And then volatility is also a barrier we face throughout the school year. That's why I put the absence high on that first slide. When we fill at an average of 85 to 100 per day, and then we spike on a day up to 174 teacher absences, it's very difficult for us to rise to that staffing-wise. That would mean that we had about 74 people who sat through most of the year not working and worked only on that day if we were to achieve a 90 to 100% fill rate. So that's something I like to bring up. Volatility is something it's an ongoing struggle for our industry and always a barrier. We've also seen a large dip in teacher prep enrollment. So we're just seeing less people going into education in general. We're seeing less people coming out of college wanting to work in education and less people enrolling, period. Kind of the Northeast is listed there. New Jersey's highlighted. We've seen a 9,000 individual loss in enrollment. That was from 2010 to 2015, but that is still on the decline. And then we have the market, the job market to compete with. You have companies like Amazon opening up locally. They're providing positions for $15 an hour, providing benefits, something we're just not budgetarily able to provide to our substitutes. And quite honestly, a day in Amazon packing plan is different than a day in a classroom with 25 children. So that's just something we're looking at. Also, the minimum wage increase that's coming upon us. We're having talks, with our school districts at this time about what are we going to do? How are we going to combat that when it does go up? I wanted to talk about our activity with the community and with the school district. We don't just consider ourselves a staffing partner to the school district. We're also a community and district partner in that we like to be as involved as possible. We've attended many of the district school back-to-school nights. We tabled there, spoke with the parents, did a little bit of light recruiting, seeing if anybody wanted to come on board as a substitute. We attended football games, a couple events at some of the elementary schools. We just like to be present. People can ask questions. People can come on board with us and work in the school district if they want. And also we provide little giveaways and informationals for the people who stop by our table. Some of the things we offer through our program, we're in district monthly at the very least doing onboarding sessions and hiring events. These are when substitutes can come and enroll to work in the district. We do on-site trainings. One of the trainings we offer is a 4-hour substitute training program in which substitutes can come. It's held in district and go through a training with Educational Resources of New Jersey. We have a building perm program implemented. That's a program we put someone in each school. They report there daily, and that's really to combat last-minute absences. They go to that school each and every day and are used there, and it's good for when we have last-minute call-outs. We know that person is going to come. It's kind of like an insurance policy. And then finally, district manager and special services manager support. I'm the district manager, and then, as I said before, Jess Walde is the special services manager. And we're available all the time for support of the district. And that concludes the presentation. If there's anyone that has questions, I'd be happy to take them now.
I do.
Okay.
Question of the substitutes that are coming into the district, how many do you see statistically are working at the same schools or within our district? Or could we get someone that, let's say, was subbing in Millville for a period of time and they came to Vineland?
So we used to think that substitutes bounced around quite a bit in their region, but we've actually found that they don't. They work in about 1.3 school districts. So we'll say someone has a preference for Vineland. They're working in Vineland most days, but on some days, if they can't find an assignment, they might go slightly outside of Vineland. So it's generally they stick to 1.3 school districts.
Okay. As part of their training requirements, do they receive any training before they actually onboard as a sub in our district for, let's say, lockdown, active shooter, some type of violent incident? Like what Are they just coming off the street and then they're in a classroom responsible for 25 kids and something bad happens?
Okay, so we do provide new employee orientations in which we cover general, like substitute one-on-one, 101 things. But with emergency procedures like that, it's very difficult because each school district, each school is different in their procedure as far as exactly what to do. It's definitely a conversation that we have had. But I would say that as far as exactly what to do in each school should something happen, we do not address that before they come in. I've had conversations with schools about possibly putting together packets to give to the substitute upon their arrival that would detail, you know, if this drill happens, these are protocol. But because there's varying protocol in varying schools, it's difficult to blanket address it.
So here's the challenge that we have with active shooter or fire drills, et cetera, is that it's unique to each school district and then it's also unique to each building. So one of the things that we work on is we use a platform called GCN, Global Compliance Network, which all of our substitutes have access to. And if they have access to a district like Vineland or another district, we can create a training or a platform delivered by Dr. Rosser, delivered by the district, and we can put it on our platform so that each substitute that is going to work in the Vineland would be able to view that training. So we're looking down that road, and then part of GCN, each year our substitutes have to take 22 modules. Part of that is active shooter, harassment, intimidation, and bullying. So all those things that you as board members and administration look at in terms of training and your teachers have to go through on a yearly basis, we're providing to our substitutes as well. Fire drills, lockdown or shutdown, really that's a partnership piece that each building that they go in, it should be in the substitute plan because it's going to be specific to the school. So that's the challenge, but we can work with the district to create certain plans that would meet the, meet the needs of the district.
And my concerns, are that on a peak day, we had 174 employees here that may or may not know our lockdown procedure, may or may not know the ingress, egress, emergency exit points, fire drills, whatever the case may be, and it's a huge safety gap, and that concerns me with bringing in so many substitutes on a given day.
Again, that's a valid concern. Safety is first, and again, that's why we're working with school districts to put that on our platform so that they can receive that type of training.
All right, thank you.
We'd be more than willing. What we have offered to a lot of our districts is, number one, do the video piece of it or the training piece of it. So if you have a training or you have something that you have already in place, we help facilitate the video process of it. And then, like I said, we'd also put it on the platform for all substitutes to be able to see it. And that would be a private platform, so it wouldn't be like we put it on Google, so it'd be visible to the public, because that would then be a safety concern. We put it on there where there's a unique login for our substitutes.
Anybody else have any questions? Comments?
So before we leave, I just want to thank you guys for the partnership. I believe we've been with Vineland for over 3 years. We value working with the district, and we appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night. The next presentation, I just simply want to mention that January is School Board Recognition Month, and the 9 people you see up here all have to run for this seat that pays nothing and takes a lot of their time. And sometimes we go head-to-head and we disagree on various things. But I certainly respect each of them for the time they give and for wanting to volunteer their time for the children of Vineland and for the staff. So I just want to take this time in January to thank you for what you do, to tell you that you're appreciated, and we even have a little certificate for each of you. So,
Thank you, Mayor. It means a lot.
Mr. English?
Thank you. Thank you, and congratulations, you guys. Been here 7 days. We don't need the photo up.
Big picture?
could take a picture if you want, but we just did one last week, so if you're good.
I think we're good.
We're definitely good.
Thank you again. I appreciate it. Okay, on to Hibbs.
Does anyone have any questions or comments on the HIB report? Seeing none, do I have a motion for the approval of minutes?
Motion.
Second.
Can I have a roll call, please? Mr. Musterell.
Ms. Acosta? Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. English?
Abstain. At this time, do we have any reports by our board solicitor?
None.
Okay, moving along. Do we have any public comment on agenda items? Seeing none, motions and resolutions by our superintendent.
Okay, I'd first like to recommend discussion under personnel regarding retirements, resignations, terminations, leaves of absence, employment, transfers, students, substitutes, extracurricular activities, and volunteers.
I'm new to this combined meeting, so
Okay,
I'm
any
taking
discussion,
any
you can-
questions or comments?
Okay, I would like to recommend discussion regarding salary increment withholding effective September 1st, 2018, for a Petway School staff member whose name is on file with the board secretary.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend discussion regarding a resolution appointing Scott A. Musterell as the interim qualified purchasing agent, establishing the bid threshold of $40,000.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend discussion of a temporary employment contract with Assistant Business Administrator Scott Musterell, not to exceed $114 per day, to serve as the interim business administrator / board secretary, which would be retroactive to January 2nd, 2019, and not exceed April 30th, 2019.
Any questions or comments?
Mr. English, clarification for the board. The agenda page gives a biweekly amount, which is equivalent to 114 per day.
Per day?
The 114 per day that you're talking about here is reflected in a biweekly amount, which is on the agenda. It should reflect the 114.
Okay. Do I have any questions or comments?
At this time, I'd like to request approval of items 1.1 through 1.4.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please. Mr. Musterell.
Ms. Acosta? Ms. Acosta? Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. English?
Yes.
Mr. Merkley, I'd like to welcome you to the Vineland School District. Congratulations. And if you'd like to say something, please feel free.
I assume it's on. Well, I appreciate the vote of confidence. I'm looking forward to coming on board. I'm a Vineland guy, born and raised. A lot of you know me. I've got 20 years' experience as a business administrator, and I'm looking to be seated where Scott is, and as soon as I can get there. So
What now?
not right now, but I appreciate the vote of confidence. I'm looking forward to working with the Vineland School District and being a part of what I do best, building budgets. And I know we got a tough year coming.
Thank you. Wish you the very best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to recommend discussion of trips and district travel.
Any questions or comments?
I would like to recommend approval of trips and district travel.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please, Mr. Musterell.
Ms. Acosta? Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
For the record, he stepped away.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. English?
Yes.
Under Buildings and Grounds, I need to I need to pull 3.1 regarding the lease that we talked about, and that will be put on in a different format, probably at the February agenda. Finance, 4.1, I'd like to recommend discussion of budgetary transfers from the general, the school-based, and the ECPA budgets for November 2018.
Questions or comments?
I'd like to recommend discussion of the Board Secretary and Treasurer report for November 2018.
Questions or comments?
I recommend discussion regarding the placement of special education students.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend discussion regarding the submission of the following grant applications. Artist in Education Residency Grant for Rossi Elementary School in the amount of $10,000, and the 2018 National School Lunch Program Equipment Assistant Grant for DePalato Elementary School and Vineland High School South in the amount of $27,086.38.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend discussion regarding acceptance of funds for the following grants. The Target Field Trip Grant for Durand Elementary School in the amount of $700. Members First of NJFCU 2018 Mini Grant for Menny's Elementary School in the amount of $100. And Dick's Sporting Goods Matter Grant for Sabatier Elementary School in the amount of $1,000.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend discussion regarding a change order number 1 from Union Roofing Contractors for the VHS South 2018 roof replacement for a credit of unused contingency allowance in the amount of $5,000.
Questions or comments?
I'd like to recommend discussion regarding change order 1 from Capri Construction for the Delago Petway Wallace secure entrances for a credit of unused contingency allowance in the amount of $5,000.
Questions or comments?
I'd like to recommend discussion regarding the renewal of a service agreement with Inspira Medical Center for Impact Healthcare Services for the period of January 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2019, in a form acceptable by the Board Solicitor and Superintendent.
Questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yes.
Do they pay rent for the space they have?
No.
Why not?
It's an in-kind contribution on our part. It's a partial grant and partial in-kind from us and money from us and partial from them. So it's, I don't know if Mr. DeSanto can explain it a little better, but we both give and we don't charge them rent to be in that facility. That's part of the agreement.
You both give what?
In other words, we give space, okay?
And
They
they
give
give
us their,
services.
right, right.
For the
Instead of us
kids.
paying additional money, we give them space. That's fair.
It's not completely free. There's a cost to us as a district, but it is a grant, and there's some in-kind services provided, and then there's some money that we put out and some money that they put out.
Okay.
Okay? I hope that helps a little.
Okay.
Okay, now, okay. Discussion regarding the 2018-19 joint transportation agreement between Vineland Public Schools and Millville Public Schools for 2 students, in the amount of $30,600.
Questions or comments?
Discussion regarding the 2018-19 joint transportation agreement between Vineland Public Schools and Greater Egg Harbor Regional for 1 student in the amount of $28,750.
Questions or comments?
Discussion regarding the following Cumberland County Regional Cooperative Transportation Initiatives: 2018-19 quoted contracts, 2018-19 addendum, the 2018-19 bid number 6, Student Transportation Services Record and Award.
Questions or comments?
I'd like to recommend approval of finance items 4.1 through 4.11.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please, Mr. Mustarell.
Ms. Acosta? Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Allrich?
Yes.
Mr. English?
Yes. Do I have any questions or comments on the bills that incurred for the month of November 2018? Seeing none. Do we need a roll call to accept them?
Yes.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Acosta? Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. English?
Yes, and I'm going to start combing through them as I did in the past, so looking forward to seeing how our money's being spent. At this time, we have no committee reports, correct? Okay, and I am working on committees. I should have them out by this coming weekend, so thanks to everyone that has reached out to me, and if you still haven't, feel free to do so before I just pop you on one. Okay? All righty. At this time, items proposed for review and discussion.
No, it's on here, totally, so you can make a comment.
Mr. Sabrana had a, basically request discussion concerning our board meetings. Do you have any comments you would like to make, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. English. I had wanted to have a conversation at the full board level about our change from a 7 PM to a 6 PM start, and also a change from a 2-meeting format a month to 1, which were both done in a rather casual fashion. However, I did a little research and conducted a brief survey, and it appears that, at least among the public, there's no concern about that. We do broadcast our meetings live. They're also available on 2 cable channels, and if people want to come and speak, they're certainly welcome to come and state their case on any particular issue. So while it might have been done casually, it does not seem done any harm, and at least among my colleagues, there doesn't seem to be any problem with continuing that. In regards to the 2-meeting-a-month format, that may require a little more conversation, because there are some months where there may be questions that can't be answered on the fly. So I invite a conversation among all of us on that regard.
Yes, Scott. You know, my only concern, and has been from the start with a combined meeting, is, number one, I'm not going to lie, it's better for us on consent items, agenda items. However, I strongly feel that if a board member kind of objects and needs more information, that we as the board should respect that and pull that item to the following month. Because I don't know if there's nothing that urgent, unless it's an emergent item that has to go. I don't know if there's nothing that urgent that can't be pushed, since we have combined meetings, to give some time to the next meeting, so that we can have additional information, clarification from the superintendent, or you know, her input to other staff members. That's the only thing that I see as the downside, is that sometimes we're forced to make decisions that Mr. Fiocchi or whoever might make a point, and I go, wow, I didn't think of that point. And then I have no time to process or debate because I'm required to vote. So, you know, I just think that if a board member and there's questions that come up, we should, as a courtesy, pull that item back to the following month, unless it's of some emergent situation. That's just my 2 cents.
Well, and I wondered, is that stipulated in bylaws or policy or anywhere about the meeting timing and duration and how many per month?
Mr. Frangipani checked that right before the meeting, so if you want to just,
I did look, I saw it on the agenda. There just says that we, in the January reorganization meeting, that we can set the calendar at that time, and the board makes that decision on what it should be.
and I think it says you have to meet at least once every 2 months, correct?
And it also says in bylaw 0161, it also says that public session at least once every 2 months during the period in which the schools are in session.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and conversely, I know historically, we've had some months in the past where we did not have a meeting. Typically, it would be in July. And I know that also in the past, normally the December meeting was a combined one, because the agenda was normally lighter, and it was at the end of the year and at the end of a term for board members. So, you know, there's 2 sides to that coin, too.
I think with trying to attend all the district events, keeping it to 1 meeting is best for some of the board members, because every week there's something going on in the schools after hours to attend.
I mean, this is good discussion here. I mean, I'm a communicator, so I love public input. I love to hear what my fellow board members say. I agree 100%. If one board member really has an issue, you shouldn't have to fight over a table and the thing. I think we should respect each other at that level and say, hey, guys, this is something that we definitely need. Usually it's something that we need more information on. And in years past, we would have a week to digest it because we did what's known as the work session. And then you could get your questions answered by Dr. Gruccio in that week span before you had to vote on, where unfortunately sometimes you do not. People come to the microphone and might change your mind, and you know, I always hear, well, only one person shouldn't be able to change your mind, but that one person might make the difference. And you, hey, I missed that totally. So at that point, I think we're going to respect each other in that format where we can move forward with that. As far as these, again, I'm learning these combined meetings. I'll be straight up. I'm not a fan of them, but they will learn. They will grow on me because the majority seems to rule on that. Mr. Medio?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted, you had mentioned this before, Scott. I think that this issue should be before the Policy Personnel Committee. Our bylaws do not provide the formatting for the combined meetings. And you could provide, for example, this request by a board member. But in any event, what we've been doing, Dr. Gruccio and I, when we have the agenda-setting conference, we've kind of merged the outlines for both meetings, the work session and the regular meeting, so that everything gets addressed at a combined meeting. So perhaps Policy and Personnel can consider an amendment to the bylaws to provide the format and entertain some of these issues that you're talking about.
Mr. Frangipani already has it on the agenda, but
Yeah.
we're just waiting for committee, and we'll
Right.
revise the two that Mr. English brought up at the reorg.
And I can put together a proposal that
Okay.
they can work on, John.
Mr. Medio?
When we're talking about these meetings, we elected you president, and I don't know how many times I heard about communication. And part of that, the way it used to be done a long time ago, was you had a combined meeting on that night. And what happened was, the week before, of course, you have the agenda setting. Now, you as a board member are supposed to be responsible enough to read the agenda on Friday when you get it, or over the weekend. What they used to do was, if you had any questions that were not really very important, but just you were curious about something, you called the superintendent. If you had a real concern, you had a conversation with your president and the superintendent. Things have improved today to the point where you can just send out an email, and a certain member of the board did it all the time, saying, do not respond, so you don't violate Oprah, which is a good move. And you just say, I have a real concern with this. And if anybody else does, they can call the superintendent. You have a work session, say, at 6 o'clock, and the advertisement says the work session is followed 10 minutes after the end, or whatever you want, by the regular session. So the regular session might start at 6:15, at 15 minutes, might start at 7:30. You don't know, depending on how much discussion there is. But as long as you have told everyone and made it aware that you have a real concern, not just an informational concern, I don't see any problem with staying with this kind of format. If you wanted to open it up a little bit and have the work session first and then vote on it instead of combining it this way, that's up to the board. But I don't see a problem with having it like we have it on the second Wednesday, I think it is, of the month. That was always the traditional date.
If I could, I'm sorry. The August meeting, the late August meeting, is essential as a regular meeting. Just wanted to note that.
Okay.
Because of staffing.
We had a third one in August, a second one in August.
In reference to something Mr. Medio said there, with my fellow board members here, if it is something that's very detailed. Yes, reach out to me. And when we talk about the board member calling the superintendent directly, I do not have a problem with that, but I would at least like to be aware that you're addressing it, something, because it could be something that I missed as well. So just in the spirit of the communication and the collaboration piece, I don't want to hear secondhand that it's been an issue and I wasn't aware of that. So if we can kind of work together on that. Dr. Gruccio has always said she has the open door policy, so take advantage of that if you do have an issue. But if it's something that, again, is that intense that it needs me to be involved, you know, we will handle that accordingly. Do we have any more? Yes.
I'd like to add something.
Sure.
Gene, I remember right before I was elected my first term, they were going to bring me this big packet of paper that you guys used to sift through, and then there was a CD after that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now it's online. I mean, it's really streamlined. I think we're doing the right thing for everybody, the public as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. While we're at it, I must tell you, I do promote people coming to the podium. I love to hear what's going on in this school district, so don't be shy. Don't be shy. Mr. Sobrano, thank you for bringing that up. I mean, does anybody else have anything to comment on or question? All right. The second thing is something that, in conjunction with Mr. Medio, I have some concerns and some questions about concerning the renaming of the Sergeant Dominic Pilla Middle School. I saw it from the outside as a taxpayer watching the way it was handled. Whether I approve or disapprove of it at that point didn't matter. But now that I'm sitting on this board, I think it's something that needs to be addressed this evening. So I would just, I know that Mr. Medio had a recommendation out there, and I'm really not sure where it ended. So if you can refresh the board, the public, and myself on the recommendation that you had for a certain committee.
Yes, the recommendation was that I volunteered to chair a committee to put together the ceremony for the dedication of the Sergeant Dominic Pilla School. That would go in line with our strategic plan, which involves bringing in more community input, more community action in regards to school district activities. I've already had some people who said if the board approves this tonight, they're more than willing to work on the committee. And right now, the date is April the 6th.
April the 6th?
Yeah, that's the current date.
Is that a weekday or is that a weekend?
It is a Saturday
That's a
at 11
Saturday.
o'clock. And I will just once again politely say that I do not believe that this is something the board should be getting involved in. I would be more than willing to take any suggestions from any board member or from the public, but this is a role that central administration has taken on for every other school that has ever been dedicated. We are working with the family. It will be a nice ceremony. It will involve input from other people, so I welcome any input from anybody who would like to share that. But we have done this several times. We did a fine job when the governor came, and I believe we'll do something just as distinguished as we have done in the past.
Thank you, Dr. Gruccio. Mr. Medio, is this something that you're thinking in the ad hoc committee style? Is that what we're thinking here, or where?
I think we can work out whatever you want to do. I mean, if we have board members, well, first of all, it has to pass.
Mm-hmm.
But if it passes, if we have board members who want to be on the committee, that'll work just fine. Like I said, we have members of the public who want to be involved. I would find it very disappointing if we turned away, you know, public participation. You will find in the next month or two, you'll probably have a board retreat. I've been through a lot of them. And the same thing always comes up all the time. Communication with the public, public input. Yeah, you can't really beat having a committee of the board, of board members and members of the public working on this and having it's actually going to be a community project.
And I understand that Dr. Guccio, just what she had stated, we're thinking this is something in conjunction with Dr. Guccio.
Of course, she'll be involved in this, yes.
Okay. Yes, please.
I think that we only get certain opportunities over the course of our service lives or the course of our lives to do something that's right, to really garner heavy public support. This involves a military hero. It's only the upside to involve the community, to have a committee and a collaboration between our district, our community, and our board. It does align with our plans. Some will say, well, you're micromanaging. No, what I'm suggesting and Gene's suggesting is that we reach out to our community, and I'm pretty sure we're going to find that there's going to be some donors that are going to add financial support to that signage or whatever comes up with. It doesn't have to fall upon us. This is heavily supported within our community. It was heavily supported at our board. I'm even strongly suggesting that we stop calling it Lincoln Middle School, because that is really, school doesn't have to be dedicated to be named. We changed that name a while ago. So I'd like to start seeing the promotion of that name start now, today. And I know it's a small thing, and some people criticize us for focusing on such a small thing and wasting time. But I'm going to support Gene on this issue, and I'm going to vote in the affirmative that there be formed an ad hoc committee with an end date.
Do I have any other questions or comments on this? Okay, at this time, then, Mr. DeSanto, I'd like to put this for a motion.
The motion would be is that the board president appoint an ad hoc committee to coordinate the dedication of the Sergeant Dominic Pilla School with membership of board members, administration, and the public. And then the question becomes, who designates the members of the public and the board? I guess you should do that too, with volunteers and,
Time to pick up my granddaughter from dance.
Hey, I'd like to see you dance. Maybe not.
That
Okay.
makes me sorry I voted for you.
Okay, I need a motion for an ad hoc committee for the renaming of the Sergeant Dominic.
No, to coordinate the
To coordinate
dedication
the
ceremony
dedication ceremony.
for the Sergeant Dominic Pilla Middle School,
For the Sergeant Dominic Pilla Middle
with
School.
membership to be appointed by the board president, with recommendations and volunteers from the public.
Excuse me, Mr. President, can we have 5 minutes recess?
Recess? Sure. Absolutely. Recess, 5 minutes.
Only if Debbie can follow us. Yeah, we're good. What do you think about that? Oh, he's criticizing my handwriting. The immediate, starting tomorrow. See, we've never had this much time. Yeah, where's Chris? We've never had this gap, Tom. All the other schools, maybe a month went by, so the implementation was pretty quick. You know, this is months, so you know, I can understand why, you know, that there's a need for this. Hope he's not ill. Did he raise his hand, number one or number two?
I'm down that area, so maybe ate too much cake.
Okay, we are back. At this time, did I have a motion?
You asked for one.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Second.
Roll call, please, Mr. Mustarell.
Ms. Acosta? Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Allrich?
Yes.
Mr. English?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, we'll discuss this very soon and get this thing rolling. I have a second motion. I'm sorry, I would like to make a motion to authorize and directing the immediate implementation of the naming of the Sergeant Dominic Pilla Middle School. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please, Mr. Mustarell.
Ms. Acosta? Mr. Fiocchi?
What,
No, we
backtrack for a
voted
second.
on the- We voted on the ad hoc committee, we're voting on the
But we
name
already
of it.
We already
voted
voted
to
on it,
rename
so what
it.
is this motion doing
This is
exactly?
on calling the school effective
It's
immediately.
named.
Oh, that,
The
so
name.
effective immediately, we're.
Yeah, referring to it as the school.
It was
Oh,
effective.
Oh, got you.
It was
I'm-
effective immediately when we voted.
I know, but it never was implemented because of the
It was-
delay.
It's
The
typically,
motion is authorizing and directing
it's
the
typically
immediate
implemented
implementation
when the
of
dedication takes
the
place.
naming of the Sergeant Dominic Pilla Middle School.
I still make the motion.
Did I have a second?
No,
Or you made the motion, I made the
you
second.
made the motion, she seconded.
She seconded it.
Any questions? Do we have any questions?
I don't see the point.
Yeah, I think it's.
Well, the point is that the naming hasn't been done. So we're still referring to it as Lincoln Middle School, where, you know, there's obvious confusion that the board took a lawful action that night, directing the superintendent to do this. Because of the delays, it hasn't happened. So I brought up in the conversation that we should immediately do this, and that's the motion that we're voting on now.
And that would be to like change over like letterhead, you know, everything would be to call
There's
it.
supposed to be an unveiling that night of the new sign and everything. That's why we typically wait until the ceremony takes place. the principal asked that we wait as long as possible because the kids are getting confused, and since it's in April, she would like to just leave things alone. I only can tell you what I was asked by the principal. The lettering is ordered, the sign is ordered, but typically, we do a ceremonial unveiling, and at that time is when we officially change the name. I'll do whatever you want, but I was never directed to tell the principal to change the name, because that's not how we've done it in the past.
I'm sure Mrs. Monahan is more than capable of handling.
I'm sure she is too. I'm just telling you the conversation we had.
That's fine, Dr. Crucio. Thank you for the information. Do I have a roll call, Mr. Mustarell?
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yeah.
Mr. Jennings?
No.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Doesn't matter.
It's all right, it's all right, it's all right.
Yeah, he's fine.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Aldrich?
Yes.
Mr. English?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any emergent items that I need to know about, that we need to discuss? We good? I think we've had enough for one night. Very good. At this time, opportunity for the public to address the board on any item. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes.
Harry Myers, 1127 Linda Lane here in Vineland. Good evening, members of the board and Dr. Gruccio. Not only am I an employee of the district, but I'm also a parent as well. My oldest child attends Veterans Memorial School. She is currently a student in 7th grade. Her reading class is an ICR room, which means in-class support, in-class resource. My daughter has an IEP, which states that she requires special modifications in her daily instruction. One of her modifications is to receive instruction from an ICR teacher in a small group setting. This has not happened for almost a month, since about December 7th. Although the classroom teacher is doing a wonderful job trying to educate all the children in the classroom, she needs the extra assistance. My child's education is suffering because we are not following state law. This class has at least 30 students at this time. It is a daunting task to try to educate this many students. This situation needs to be rectified. Could you please look into this matter? I would appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Would anyone else like to address the board this evening? Seeing none, do we have any old or new business? This time, board member remarks. Mr. Medio?
Nothing at this time, except thank you to my fellow board members, and I'll get started on that committee right away. If any of you want to serve, you know where to get in touch with me.
Thank you, Mr. Medio. Mr. Sabrana?
Nothing else tonight, thank you.
Mr. Jennings?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Fiocchi?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Mr. Holmes?
Nothing at this time.
Ms. Spinelli?
I just want to wish all the Mr. Vineland contestants tomorrow night at the high school good luck. If you want a good night out, it's actually really funny. Bring your kids. It's very entertaining, and the kids really go the extra mile.
Thank you, Ms. Spinelli. Mr. Ulrich?
Yes, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Merkley on the business administrator job role. Obviously, you've been around a while. You know that we present a challenge. I guess I'll say that lightly because it's going to be a big cliff you're climbing. So, you know, I look forward to working with you as a member of the Finance Committee, along with Mr. Fiocchi and Mr. Holmes. So, you know, we're going to start jumping on that. I don't know when your contract is going to let you out, but the sooner the better, hopefully. I'd also like to thank Dr. Gruccio for transitioning into the new board. I've had a lot of conversations with her over the last few days, and I think that, you know, that is the only way we can accomplish things, is making sure that everything is out in the open. There's a clear process followed, and I'd like to thank her personally for, my calls are never turned away. So I don't know if any other board members are, but mine are never turned away, and I'd just like to thank her for that.
Thank you, Mr. Ulrich. Dr. Gruccio.
I'd just like to thank Phase 3 Trucking. They made a $1,000 donation to the DePalto Crisis Team, and I'd like to thank them for that.
Thank you, Dr. Gruccio. Mr. Merkley, welcome to Vineland. I'm looking forward to working with you. I've been here for about 7 days, so you got a little bit of time ahead of you, but I'm hoping that you will be bringing a new culture to the way we spend money here in the Vineland Public School District. Your resume really spoke for itself, so again, I will look forward to working with you with the Finance Committee and in conjunction with everything else we do here. To my fellow board members, it's been a trying week for me trying to get to know everybody. I do lead a little bit different than you may be used to. I may be a little more demanding, I'm not sure, but it's pretty much my style, and as we get to know each other better, I'm sure things will get a lot smoother. I do want to thank everyone that answered my questions and my concerns concerning a couple of different issues, and 1 month done, so we have 11 to go, and let's keep working together, and we'll get this thing right. At this time, do I have a motion for adjournment? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Good night.